Good morning. Happy 1 hour shorter weekend. Welcome. Welcome to the Unitarian Universalist Congregation of Danbury. Welcome to those online. We're glad you're here. We hope that you are aware that it's 10 o'clock, not 9 o'clock. We have several announcements this morning. There's an all-congregation workshop after the service. 11:30 a.m. to 1:30. A taco salad bar will be provided for lunch. Childcare will be available for kids who don't want to participate. This workshop is vital for our future. It will be the beginning of a congregational strategic plan for the future of our ministries for children and youth. The vision for this must come from the whole congregation. We hope that everyone will be there. It will also be important to stay for the whole event. There are 3 portions of the workshop, each with a distinct purpose. A Zoom link will be sent at 11 this morning for those participating via Zoom. Now, Margaret and Bob would like to come up for a special announcement.
Are you going to do the welcome after this? Do the welcome after the yes. Okay. Good morning. I'm Margaret Henderson, president of the Board of Trustees. And I'm here because nominating committee has a special announcement to make this morning. As many of you may know, there are 7 slots on the Board of Trustees: the president, vice president, treasurer, and secretary, plus 3 rotating trustees, each with a 3-year term. At the moment, we have a board of 6 people. One of those trustee slots is open. So as we're preparing for the annual meeting in June, we'll be working very closely with nominating committee. In fact, that's not even really fair. Nominating committee will be doing most of the work, looking for someone to fill that last position. We are fortunate this year that anyone else whose term was up, like me, president is a 1-year term, has agreed to serve again for another year. So we're just hoping to add a trustee. I also wanted to mention for any new people who are thinking about attending the annual meeting, it's on Sunday, June 4th after the service, the week after Memorial Day. And everyone is welcome to come. We encourage you to. If you're interested in voting in the election for candidates and things like that, you need to be a member as of 60 days before that, which is April 4th. So if there's anybody either in person or on Zoom who's interested in becoming a member, between now and April 4th would be a great time. Come on in and sit down, you guys. Wait. So is that everything I was supposed to say? I think so. Oh, Gail's here. Come on up, Gail. Gail, all the way up next to me where the camera can see you. Gail is one of the trustees on the board. In fact, as you may recall, he bailed us out last year at the annual meeting by volunteering to join the board at the last minute. So we appreciate all your service. And now I'm going to turn it over to Bob Bollinger, who is the chair of the nominating committee.
Okay, thanks, Margaret. The nominating committee consists of me and Jackie and Dan Brodax. So I have familiar faces to you, I think. And the job of the nominating committee is to nominate candidates to fill openings on the Board of Trustees and the nominating committee, and also the moderator. And those nominees then, and others, any others that get nominated at the annual meeting, get voted on at the annual meeting. And so, as Margaret said, the current officers are agreeing to stay on and be nominated for another term, which is very good news, I think. And so specifically, we, the nominating committee, will be nominating Margaret for another one-year term as president, John Milieta for another one-year term as vice president, and Nancy Cohen as another one-year term as secretary. Now, as Margaret alluded to, there's several other board members like Marie Dupree, treasurer. She's in the first year of a 2-year term, so she does not need to stand for election this year. And of the 3 trustee positions, Gail is in the middle of a 3-year term. Peter Horton also is in the middle of a 3-year term, so they do not have to stand for re-election. And as moderator, we just honored you, Nancy. No problem. And Randy Becker is our current moderator. He was elected a year ago to a 2-year term, so he does not need to stand for re-election this year. So what does that leave in terms of openings? We need to find a trustee to serve a 3-year term, and we need to find a new member of the nominating committee, because I'm in the 3rd year of a 3-year term, to join Dan and
Let's get Dan in. The
Jackie.
people online can't see you when you have to stand like right over Bob's shoulder. Yeah, you can come back here.
You can stand in front of me. They didn't see that. Don't put that on. Please don't. This is why we don't do stuff.
I'm sorry.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah, okay, sorry.
yeah, just sit down, sure.
Yeah, that's fine. That's fine.
Okay, so the bottom line, the nominating committee still needs to find a trustee and a member to join the nominating committee. So any of you who are interested in learning what that would entail and possibly be interested in serving those in one of those jobs, feel free to see me or any of us that are up here. Okay, I was just inviting any of you who are interested or curious as to what that kind of work would entail. Talk to any of us that are up here, and we'd be glad to tell you what that involves. Okay.
Would you like a chair brought over? Yes. Yeah. We're going to celebrate.
Okay. Continue with announcements. I'll try to make them brief. 7th and 8th grade OWL will meet at 5:30, and we've resumed collecting non-perishable food donations on Sunday mornings. You can leave those food donations in the basket in the foyer. We also need folks to sign up to transport those donations weekly to the Dorothy Day Hospitality House on Spring Street. One more announcement. Sally Mandler and Judy Lacker and I have put our heads together, our Junitarian heads together, for planning another fabulous music-filled Passover Seder on Friday evening, April 7th, here in Fellowship Hall, starting at 6 p.m. There will be flyers in the foyer about that. It is potluck. We're asking everyone to bring something and to email Sally about what you're bringing. So those are our announcements for today. Oh, Randy. I did write to myself, call Randy up, but did I see it? No.
I'm Randy Becker, and on Wednesday evening, we're having the beginning of the three-part series discussing mistakes and miracles, the discussion about congregations engaging in multicultural work. And some people have approached me and said, the book's not available. That's true. It's not available in a paper form because of supply chain issues. I've talked with the UUA about it, but it doesn't matter. Even if you haven't read the book, forget class, forget college stuff. Just come anyway. We'll have a informed discussion.
It's on Audible too.
What?
It's on Audible as well.
Yeah, it's on Audible, but it's not available as. So no, come, and it's also open to our youth as well as our adults, because this is about the future of us being a multicultural congregation.
Okay. So again, welcome to the Unitarian Universalist Congregation of Danbury, both here in the hall and on Zoom. We have been gathering for 200 years. This is our 200th birthday. We are a welcoming congregation. If you are here for the first time and you're here in the hall, we hope that you'll sign the guest card in the foyer on your way out. And if you are here on Zoom, we hope that you will stay afterwards and join a breakout room for deeper check-ins and a chance to get to know some of your co-congregants. So welcome to the Unitarian Universalist Congregation of Danbury, where we welcome all in a spirit of, help me here, who knows the rest of, I didn't bring my cue notes, in a spirit of compassion, inquiry, and service. I knew Sam would know. Okay, thank you very much. So now join us in our hymn of welcome, number 38, Morning is Broken. I'm going to ask Ethan McCoy to come and light our chalice this morning. Ethan has grown up in this congregation, and I hope that you will all join me in the words as Ethan lights the chalice. Just gonna lean, wait, can you reach, sweetie? Love is the spirit of this congregation, and justice is its light. This is our covenant, to dwell together in peace, to seek and speak the truth in love, and then blow it out. Help one another and celebrate life. Thanks, Ethan. And now please join Sierra Marie in the words of our children's affirmation.
All right, we are Unitarian Universalists. We are people with open minds, loving hearts, and helping hands. We care for the earth and each other. It's good to be together. Normally, when we enter into any kind of service space together, any worship space together, I usually say to kids, we have all of the time that we need, and so we can slow down. And I'm also really aware that I'm running a 2-hour meeting after the service today, and that we're running a little behind. And so I'm going to share part of the story. And then just so I'm not keeping people past 1:30, I'll stop. The way that my colleague, the Reverend Kate Wilkinson, begins today's story is like this. Transport yourselves to the mid-1800s to a farm in rural Illinois. Picture it, Reverend Kate says. Hamilton, Illinois, 1850. A young girl stands on a tree stump in the front yard of her farm, not far from the bank of the Mississippi River. She is amusing her family by preaching to them in a loud and confident voice from her perch on the stump. The performance seems harmless enough even to her mother, who is sure her daughter Mary will grow up to work for the church in what was thought to be, at the time, a woman's supportive role. She will lend her hand in the kitchen and pray from the pews. But Mary has other ideas. Every day she runs to the orchard to meet her best friend Eleanor, who lives nearby. The two are inseparable. They're a comical pair. Mary is tall, thin, and elegant. Eleanor is sturdy, strong, and laughing all the time. Mary is good in front of a crowd, always with polished things to say. Eleanor is better with people, easily conversing with an individual or small circle. They both love to read. And that is the end of that quote. So my colleague, Reverend Kate Wilkinson, continues to tell the story of how the things they read and the subjects they debated together included a variety of writings by Unitarian preachers. Both Mary and Eleanor want to go to college, but both have to cut their education short for different personal reasons. And still, they have other ideas. They self-educate, and on the Great Plains in the latter part of the 1800s, they become ordained as ministers. They are not the first women ministers. The very first is Universalist Olympia Brown. But there are ordained women ministers, often starting their own churches in that particular time and place, is remarkable. Would you agree with that? Remarkable. And it's also no accident. The seminaries out east, as Reverend Kate points out, train men to minister on the green in conditions far different than that of the places known to European Americans as frontier. Most of these men don't feel drawn to the hardships of moving westward, and Mary and Eleanor are able to find the place for their heart's work, for their other ideas, in that exact landscape. Just imagine that. In the words of another storyteller, Polly Peterson, traveling by horse and buggy along dusty dirt roads in summer heat, fording streams, swatting mosquitoes, wearing clothes with long sleeves and a high collar, or making the same trip on icy roads beginning in the dark of a cold winter morning, whipped by bitter wind, with sleet stinging the face. Imagine that a congregation is waiting for you when you reach your destination. You preach a sermon, lead the hymns, meet with the church officers, give counsel to troubled parishioners, and help organize a church supper for an evening discussion group. Then, at the end of a long day, perhaps you receive news of a death in another town, and you know you must be on the road again to comfort the grieving family. And that's the end of that quote from Polly Peterson. These churches were different than the ones in the East. The hymns were altered a little to be more inclusive. The churches were focused on children's education and community care. They were designed precisely for the conditions of their landscape and the communities within. And I'm going to skip a little bit here. I want to say, too, that this is only the beginning of the story, because the rest of the story is about the Iowa Sisterhood, which is what Eleanor and Mary start, the first professional network of women in the country. Mary and Eleanor mentor other girls and women into the ministry, women like Eliza Tepper Wilkes. Eliza would start congregations specifically to turn over to other women. This is a story of sisterhood. And I will end the story there. Let's sing together this little light of mine.
It's now time for our milestones, both silent and spoken. It's a time for us to share things that are lifting us up or weighing us down. And we'll begin by our silent milestones. If there is something that is in your heart that you prefer to mark or observe by placing a stone in the bowl, please come and do that now. And we'll have a silent reflection accompanied by Jerry. Please join us in hymn number 396. The words will be on the screen. I know this rose will open.
I know this rose will open. I know my fear will burn away. I know my soul will unfurl its wings. I know this rose will open. I know this rose will open. I know my fear will burn away. I know my soul will unfurl its wings. I know this rose will open. I get to talk free. This is the time in our service when we offer what we can for the support of this congregation. For people who are visiting for the first time, your presence is a gift. You do not need to put anything in the plate. For people who may be at home who want to send a check, please send it to UUCD or spell it out at 24 Clapbridge Road and write in the little memo that this is for the offertory, or if you are sending in a pledge payment, also put that down. Okay, so we will now take an offering for the continuation of the good works of this congregation. That is so generous. That's wonderful. Before I start, I would like to dedicate this service to women all over the world. I have been very interested in International Women's Month, which is March, International Women's Day being March 8th, which is just about mentioned in the United States, although it's being mentioned a little bit more often. But in some countries of the world, it's actually a day when no one has to go to work. At least women don't have to go to work. So I just want to light a candle for all of the women in the world. There are lots of women in the world who have no freedom. There are lots of women in the world who are abused. There are lots of women in the world who have absolutely no rights. And when we think about some of the issues that the American women have about having rights, they pale very, very insignificant in comparison to other women in the world. At least that's my opinion, for what it's worth. Come on. Yeah, usually it doesn't. You better bring that to us. This is just about going to make it. I don't think it here. Here we go. Okay, for all the women in the world, that means all of us too, who are female. She walks in beauty like the night of cloudless climes and starry skies, and all that's best of dark and light meet in her aspect and her eyes. Thus mellowed to that tender light which heaven so gaudy day denies. One shade the more, one ray the less, had half impaired the nameless grace which waves in every raven tress, or softly lightens o'er her face, where thoughts serenely sweet express how pure, how dear their dwelling place. And on that cheek and o'er that brow, so soft, so calm, yet eloquent, the smiles that win, the tints that glow, but tell of days in a goodness spent, a mind at peace with all below, a heart whose love is innocent. These are the words of George Gordon Bryan, 1788 to 1824, better known as Lord Byron. These beautiful words of Lord Byron, the British Romantic poet, were written about 1850 for the Victorian ladies who were upper class, ladies who wore silk and brocade and were used to a high society social life, women who were used to having servants. They wore precious stones, pearls, set in gold and silver. And while he was doing all of this, across the pond in the colonies, society and legislators were having a discussion about the state of the nation and about voting rights for women. Women were meeting and mobilizing about their right to have a say in how the government worked in many parts of the East. It was women of social prominence at the heart of the suffragist movement. The same women who gathered with other like-minded women in Seneca Falls in 1848 to discuss women's rights. This gathering helped to formalize and publicize a cause born earlier amid a battle to abolish slavery. The group agreed to universal suffrage regardless of sex, race, or creed. Their convention inspired white women abolitionists to rebel against their own second-class citizen status. Lucretia Mott, Harriet Beecher Stowe, Elizabeth Cady Stanton are names that we probably all recognized who were spearheading this effort across the country. But these are not the women I want to talk about today, because we've always heard about them. When I was just learning about the westward expansion at the tender age of about 11 or 12, back in the 40s and 50s, I thought riding west in a Conestoga wagon was the most exciting thing that anyone could ever do. Little did I know that a family of 6, like my own family, had to crowd into a wagon that was 3 feet wide and 8 feet long. And they had to bring their clothes, and they had to bring grandma's rocking chair, and they had to bring anything that they needed for not only their journey west, but for when they found a homestead, so that they could have something from home. There were sleeping accommodations during the over 4-month journey until they claimed their land. Must have been a bit uncomfortable. And those 24 square feet of wagon space was packed with everything: potatoes, onions, flour, things that they were going to need. And there were babies, there were kids, there were mothers and fathers. How many of you have ever just lived in a 24-foot space with 5 other people? Well, I didn't know about all this. It still was very, very exciting to me. I just lost my place. More than likely, I already said this, but I'll say it again. There was a store of potatoes and carrots and barrels of flour so that they could eat along the way. And once they were settled. But the thought of going west was still romantic to this 6th grader who lived in a house, had running water. I had electricity. I shared a bedroom with my sister. It was warm in the winter. It wasn't necessarily cool in the summer, but we didn't have to worry about anything. We didn't have to worry about food. We didn't have to worry about clothes. If I got sick and I was sick enough for the doctor would come to my house and he'd look at my throat and look at my ears. And then he would give me medicine so that I could be well again. And for a couple of days, I would sleep in my mother's bed and drink tea during the day and eat toast. We had lots of neighbors. We had lots of friends. I walked to school with a whole bunch of kids. I was lucky to live in a very, very diverse town with very diverse school populations. So there was very little fear of people who looked differently than I did. So I just imagine on, and I learned the real truth about the westward expansion in later years at school. And I've taken up a new interest in that now that I have hit a new milestone. Western movies had not become very popular yet. They didn't become popular until after World War II, except for a few of the silent movies, you know, when they shot and they did all that other stuff. But seeing those handsome cowboys dressed in those tight jeans with those leather chaps and those feisty cowgirls who had, you know, a little bit of cleavage. All those women riding on stagecoaches with their feathers and their beautiful clothes. Man, that's where I wanted to be. That was it. Okay. So all of my fantasies were rekindled again. Once all of these handsome cowboys, I mean, I was in love with Roy Rogers. And I thought he had the most gorgeous horse in the world. Gangs and posses were a new phenomenon to a lot of us. But we learned about them through the movies. And we found out about saloons and jails. And sometimes we wondered why those ladies were always going upstairs with some cowboy behind her. And we only learned about battles with indigenous people in a lot of those movies, and they were not really portrayed very, very well. Most images were certainly not kind, at least for the indigenous people. No one ever talked specifically about the pioneer woman, though. She was always portrayed as a companion to a husband. The husband worked hard. She kept care of her children, swept out her dirt floor house, raised a lot of kids because they needed help on the farm. Men ruled the domain and made all of the rules. And when they, as heads of households, decided to move west, there was no discussion with the wife. Women were not privy to any discussions about what was going on in the West because they were barred from town meetings and from attending any kind of a political discussion. Now, we heard a little bit earlier about women who lived just west of the Mississippi, maybe in Ohio or Indiana, who were married, most likely had a bunch of kids. One day their husband comes home and says, guess what, hon? Guess what we're going to do? We're going to pack up the wagon and we're going to drive for 4 months west. And we're going to claim some land and we're going to have a farm. Can you imagine some of you women hearing that? Some of you men hearing that? The land is free for the taking out there. The government was proposing something called the Homestead Act. All you had to do was get to a certain place, by a certain time, race to your land and stick something in it to claim it. Up to 665 acres, 165 acres. And there was nothing that said that a wife, interestingly enough, could not also claim a piece of land right next to her husband's. So the size of the farm doubled. So with the promise of free land and successful crops, the small farms were sold and families packed up what they could fit into their crowded wagon. They tied a cow behind it so they could have milk on their journey, and off they ventured to find a new farm, free at that. No one had any idea about the journey that lay ahead, and many were blinded by the better life ahead. Many people, mostly women, crossing the prairie kept diaries describing their lives, the beautiful countryside. Others described their traveling companions who also spoke different languages or ate different kinds of food than they did, and how they only mingled when there was something stressful or there was a hardship. Others wrote about how hard it was crossing the land and the hard work needed to be done every day by everyone. Still others sent stories back home, which were eventually printed as news in Eastern newspapers. Some of those stories were about native savages that they met along the way. Once land was secured for development by a family, stories of hard work and the need to carry water to help the crops germinate became a task for the woman. Clearing the land and building shelters, a time when families had to scramble to survive before the crops could even come in. But the women had to grow gardens, and they had to take care of them. Women were crucial to the backbreaking process of homesteading, and without domestic partners, men were hard-pressed to get the work done, whether clearing the woods or starting a business. Housing was less than comfortable. If they were lucky, a cabin or a shack with a dirt wood floor that did no more than get them out of the weather. One room, but bigger than a wagon. And many families lived in that one room for 6 to 8 months. Cabins later were new developments because they built sleeping lofts so people could get off the floor. And heat rises, so it was probably warm up there. And they built lean-to kitchens on the side. I like to cook, but not that much, I'll tell you that. It was a woman's responsibility to turn these shacks into homes, utilizing some of the treasures that they brought along on their trek across the country. They were also expected to fix 3 meals a day and take care of all of the children. When crops came in, they had to preserve food for the winter. And it was added to the chores that women had to complete. Her job was to care for the family and the children. She had to mend clothes. She had to sew clothes. She had to launder the clothes. She had to gather the eggs, taught the children how to read, especially the Bible. Laundry and baking days were all-day affairs. I will never complain again about having to do laundry, when all I have to do is go like this, put it in a machine, throw in some soap, and press a button. Because the women who went west had a big iron kettle that they had to get on top of a fire. And then they had to lug all the water to get the water heated. And then they had to boil all the clothes. And then they had to get more water to rinse all the soap and whatever dirt didn't come out of them when they washed them, and then hang them up. Took all day. My shoulders ache just thinking about it. The only break for Mama during one of those days was to prepare food and tend the needs of her husband and her children. Women also often supplied their cash-strapped family with money because they might have a few extra eggs that they can sell. Or when they were baking, maybe they had an extra loaf of bread that they could sell for a few dollars. Others sold services, not the kind you're thinking about, but laundry and mending clothes. Many of them cooked for single men. There was a large itinerant male population in the Oregon Territory in the post-Civil War days. There were 137 white men to every 100 white women. 137 white men to white women. Women who were abandoned or widowed during the war were often the first to cook meals for some of the men who did not have a companion to do it for them. They built bathhouses. They built boarding houses, even if it was just stacking up some hay bales over in a corner to give them some kind of privacy. One such story that I read is that a man actually paid $5 for a meal, which in today's economy would be worth over $160. Women needed to survive and they needed to care for their families. Most earned enough money to attain some stature in the community by either having a boarding house or a laundry or something like that. And they prospered. They began to fill a lot of different roles. They became teachers, preachers, businesswomen, still while caring for their children. They also reached out to the new people that were arriving all of the time from the East. They became especially profitable when gold was discovered in California and silver in Nevada. The new mining industries became the new powerhouses and gave women a lot of new opportunities. And as men went west to strike it rich, many women stayed behind and built schools so that their children could be educated, and they got involved in politics. Most men who stayed behind had seen firsthand the hard work and believed that women were as strong as men and could work as hard as men, and believed that women had a right to have a say in what went on. They had discovered that women were not the weaker sex, but could work side by side along the men, doing heavy lifting, clearing land, plowing, planting, harvesting. And if they could do all of these things, they had a right to have a say in politics or what was going on. With the formation of local and state governments, many women participated in the management of towns. They were elected representatives in newly formed state governance, and many went on to get educated in medicine and the law. And it wasn't just white women, women of color, and people from Mexico and some of the former slaves, people who worked on the Transcontinental Railroad who were mostly Asian. All of these people, all of these women were given all of the rights to be able to get an education and to do all of those things. When the United States won the Mexican-American War, it acquired much of the Southwest, Arizona, New Mexico, parts of Nevada, Utah, and Colorado. And this is what brought the tremendous diversity to the landscape that I just spoke about. Native Americans and Mexican people lived on this land and taught new skills and had new perspectives and feelings about the settlers of the West. And the settlers of the West learned a lot of things from them. Pioneer women embraced the knowledge offered by these other women and expanded their understanding and the need for the relationships with these newfound neighbors. New opportunities for the Native people were given the same weight they were given to the settlers by sharing knowledge and forming bonds and new friendships. This welcoming and acceptance gave a broader playing field for the women's involvement, and soon women of color had equal stance in local government. The completion of the railroad brought new settlers and new things happening in the East with regard to suffrage. Not much had changed since some of these Westerns packed up that wagon and trekked west. They forded rivers and they won a never before respect for their capabilities and their strengths. The women of the West must have been proud that they had already won the right to vote and govern. Rights that were still being denied their sisters in the East. It was almost 80 years until suffrage was granted in the East, when it had already been granted in Wyoming and a couple of the other states out there. The fight for equality after the passage of the 19th Amendment was still incomplete. And for many women are still being fought. A woman's place was still in the home. Women could not have their own bank accounts. There were inequities in funds and funding for sports. Women were still considered the weaker sex and were subject to their husbands. They were taking a place away from a man when they enrolled in college. Many women were looked upon unfavorably by professors. Ruth Bader Ginsburg was one of those women who was just looked down upon by her professors at Harvard Law School. So she went to Columbia. Women's participation in medicine and science and business. There are many women who have had patents and created a lot of things, and they were never given credit for them. There is still inequity in wages for women doing some of the same work as men. The revolutionary 60s brought many of these issues to light, and now women lead Fortune 500 companies. They're presidents of universities and financial institutions. They are doctors and scientists and astronauts and pilots and generals in the Army and admirals in the Navy. Title IX brought equity in finance for sports so that I can watch the Yukon women play basketball. There are still many facts and triumphs to discover that celebrate women, the everyday women who make life happen. This has just been a tiny history lesson, and I really didn't mean to give you 3 credits today, but think of all of the women throughout time who have broken barriers, who have proven their abilities, and who have shown that we are not the weaker sex or gender after all. No longer will we reply, I am just a housewife, or I am just a teacher. And no longer will we complain that I have so much laundry to do. I thank you for listening to me. I just couldn't go the route again the same way, because I'm absolutely fascinated by the influence that women had going west. And I just took it for granted that my ride in that 8x3 Conestoga wagon was going to be full of adventure and beautiful things. So thank you for listening.
Please join us in the words that will be on the screen as we extinguish our chalice. We extinguish this flame, but not the light of truth, the warmth of community, or the fire of commitment. These we carry in our hearts and out into the world until we are together again. And now join us in our hymn of celebration, Love Will Guide Us by Sally Rogers. Hymn number 131, the words will be on your screen. Rise as you are able.
Love will guide us, peace has tried us, hope inside us, lead the way on the road from free to giving. Love will guide us through the hard night. If you cannot sing like angels, if you cannot speak before thousands, you can give from deep within you. You can change the world with your love. Love will guide us, peace has tried us, hope inside us, lead the way on the road from free to giving. Love will guide us through the hard night.
Because of those who came before, we are. In spite of their failings, we believe. Because of and in spite of the horizons of their vision, we too dream. Let us go remembering to praise and to live in the moment, to love mightily and to bow to the mystery. Now let's listen to Joanne.
I am woman, hear me roar, in numbers too big to ignore. And I know too much to go back and pretend. 'Cause I've heard it all before, and I've been down there on the floor. No one's ever gonna keep me down again. Oh yes, I'm wise, but it's wisdom born of pain. Yes, I paid the price, but look how much I gained. If I have to, I can do anything. I am strong, I am invincible, I am woman. You can bend but never break me, 'cause it only serves to make me more determined to achieve my final goal. And I come back even stronger, not a novice any longer, 'cause you've strengthened the commitment in my soul. Oh yes, I'm wise, wise, but it's wisdom born of pain. Yes, I paid the price, but look how much I gained. If I have to, I can do anything. I am strong, I am invincible, I am woman. I am woman, watch me grow, standing toe to toe as I spread my loving arms across the land. But I'm still an embryo with a long, long way to go before I make my brother understand. Oh, yes, I'm wise, but it's wisdom born of pain. Yes, I paid the price, but look how much I gained. If I have to, I can face anything. I am strong, I am invincible, I am woman. I am woman. I am invincible. I am strong. I am invincible. I am strong. I am woman.